Hello and welcome to this Cartoon Smart video tutorial. My name is Brian Zakowski and we are exploring Adobe Illustrator CS5. This video is going to be about scale, strokes, and effects. So that's, if you don't have a document open incidentally, go ahead and create a new document just in case you want to follow along and do what I'm doing. I already have a document, so it doesn't matter what your parameters are. You know, whatever this is, just click OK. Alright, I don't need one. I already have this, and I like to use this one. So what we're talking about is the scaling of strokes and effects on your objects in Illustrator. So right now, if I go to my preferences, my general preferences, it's going to be under the Illustrator menu on a Mac, and the edit menu if you're using Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and open my general preferences panel, and we have an option called scale, strokes, and effects, and I have it set so it's already selected, and I'm going to deselect that because I want to start with showing you what happens when you don't have that selected. Okay, so I'm going to go over to your tools palette, and go over to where you see the rectangle in the box here. I already was playing with a star, so it was by default, it kind of set itself to a star. So go to that box and go down and select the star tool if you want to follow along, and just click anywhere and kind of drag out your star, and before you let go, you'll notice that you can turn it however you want. I'm just gonna leave it like that. Alright, now you'll see yours might be a different color, might not have a stroke. If your object doesn't have a stroke on it, click over here and give it a stroke. If it doesn't have a color, just give it like a black color, just kind of drag down. Alright, so the color doesn't matter for this demonstration, really. In fact, I kind of want something a little bit lighter. I'm going to double click in my little swatch here, and I'm going to go to something kind of a green. I like that green. If you see this little exclamation point, a little warning sign next to that, what that means is it may not print accurately, that color. It's more of a screen color than a printing color. You might need a special process ink if you wanted to print that. So it doesn't really matter if you're going to output. Did I say like 3-4 times in a row? If you're going to output just a screen, it's not going to matter. This is a print dialog warning. Oh, okay, click OK. All right, this is about scaling, strokes, and effects. So you'll notice that the star is the stroke up here is set to 6. I don't want it that fat. I'm going to bring that down to 2. The last thing I was working on must have been 6 points, so that's what I went to. So if I select my star with the direct selection tool here, I'm sorry, that's the direct selection tool. This is your general selection tool. And grab one of these anchor points and go ahead and scale that up. Hold down Shift to make it proportional. And you'll see that the stroke, if I click on that, it's going to stay at 2 points. And that is because the scale, strokes, and effects is not selected. Okay, I'm going to undo that, go back to where it was. And if I go ahead, it doesn't have to be selected. Go to Preferences again, and click on Scale, Strokes, and Effects. All right. Now, when you make it, when you scale it up, hold down Shift to make it proportional. Now you'll see that the stroke got a lot bigger. It actually scaled proportionally, so it's now like 4 point something. It might be different on yours depending on what you did. So you'll see that the size of the star and the size of the stroke actually scaled up proportionally to each other. Now the same thing applies to effects, because it's scale, strokes, and effects. So if I was to go ahead and apply something like, if I go to my effects panel or effects menu, sorry, go down to Stylize and select drop shadow, and whatever it's set to, click OK, it doesn't matter. And now we have a drop shadow in there. And if I scale the star up again, hold down my shift, it's going to take a second to do that because it's applying a raster effect, and it takes a little bit more processing power than if it was just vector. So you'll notice that the the drop shadow is proportional to the size of the star. I'm going to undo that and undo that again, go back to my regular size. So if I go to File, Illustrator Preferences, Edit Menu if you're using Windows, go down to Preferences, go to Preferences, and uncheck these Scale, Strokes, and Effects. Click OK. Now when I go ahead and drag my star up, alright, it's going to take a second to apply that. The drop shadow did not get bigger proportionally to the star. Let's make it obvious by keeping that star. I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt on my keyboard as I drag a new star over. Right? I'm holding down my finger's in the way. Option or Alt, and I'm going to drag that out and let go and make a duplicate of the star. So now I'm going to go ahead and hold my shift down, grab an anchor point, one of these white doohickeys, and make the star really big. And it's going to take a second to apply that. Now you'll see that the drop shadow, in this case, is the same distance away on both stars. Okay. I'm going to undo that. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Now if I go to Preferences, General, Scale, Strokes, and Effects, now we have it selected. Click OK. I'm going to drag out a duplicate by holding Option or Alt while dragging it out and then letting go. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab an anchor point and scale the star way up. Bear with me. If your computer is doing the same thing, bear with it. Okay, now you'll see that the drop shadow is proportional to the size of the star. So you get the picture. It's going to scale the stroke and the effect. The effect being the drop shadow in this case. So back over to Preferences, General. Notice you have, oh, can't show you now. I'm going to cancel that. Notice you have a keyboard shortcut. I recommend you use them. I'm not going to use them a whole lot in these videos simply because I'm not really sure. I don't have a Windows keyboard in front of me, so I tend to get confused as to what the equivalent is on both boards. So what's best to is just notice, I'm going to go through the menus, and just notice what your keyboard shortcut is on yours and try to do it. But for the sake of the videos, I like to use the menus. That way you can follow along better with what I'm doing. If I'm using keyboard shortcuts, I'll forget to mention it, and you go, whoa, what did he just do? How did he do that? So that's why. All right. Now I lost my train of thought. Go back to Preferences, General, and I'm gonna actually I think I'm done showing you what I wanted to show you. In your effects, if you go down to Stylize, notice that there were other things besides drop shadow like feather, inner glow, outer glow. We'll get into those effects later on in other videos, but the same idea applies. If you have an effect applied to your object, it's going to scale proportionally. If you have the option selected, if you don't have Scale, Strokes, and Effects selected, it's not going to scale them. So that's pretty simple to understand. And I had these characters on here for a reason, and I'm trying to think of what that was now. And oh yeah, I think I do. Okay, I'm gonna move the cat out of the way for a minute. So I have my dog, and I'm going to say I want my strokes to be thicker on the dog. Rather than go in and manually change the stroke on it, I can use the scale strokes and effects and kind of drag. I'll demonstrate so as not to lose you. So this dog here is made up of a bunch of smaller objects, and you'll see that if I'm dragging, as I drag my cursor, my pointer, over different parts of the dog, you'll see that he's made up of different shapes. And if I'm dragging him over here, you'll see that a lot of those lines are actually overlapping, indicating that he is made up of multiple objects. So I'll bring it right back over here. So say I wanted my stroke to be thicker than what it is on the dog. Sure, I could go over to my stroke right here and click the, I can't click the up arrow, but I can actually go in here and select a value. Say I want to make it thicker and go up to, say for instance, like 6. Now the thing is with that is everywhere that I actually had a stroke on the dog, some things are just fills in the dog, didn't have strokes, but any place that I actually had a stroke applied here on the dog, everything went to, what is it? What did we go up to, like 7 or something like that? Yeah, we went up to 7, and actually it was 6. But it made all the strokes in the grouped object 7 points in this case. So that's not really what I wanted. So I'm going to undo that a couple of times, get back to my original. So I want the stroke to be thicker, but I want it to be thicker proportionally. So these strokes on these little details on the dog's mouth are actually going to be smaller than the stroke. If I zoom in a little bit, we can probably see better. Okay, you see that the strokes on these parts of the dog are thicker than that. So in order to make all the strokes thicker proportionally, I can go ahead and select the dog and go to my preferences, general. Now my scale strokes and effects is selected, so I'm going to leave that the way it is. I take the dog and make him bigger by grabbing an anchor point and holding my shift down to scale him proportionally, and all my strokes scaled up proportionally, just as we expected. But that didn't really help me because I want the strokes to be thicker. I want them to appear thicker. So I select my dog again. I'm going to go to preferences and general, and I'm going to this time undo the scale strokes and effects. Click OK. Notice I made the dog bigger, so all the strokes in the dog got proportionally bigger. But now that I have that deselected, and I go ahead and take my dog and scale him down by holding shift to scale him proportionally and make him somewhat, I don't know, maybe half the size. That looks about half right there. You'll see that the stroke is now thicker proportionally. See, these strokes here on the detail are not the same size as the outer stroke of the dog. And say for the cartoon I wanted to do, this was more in line or similar to the strokes on the other objects that I had already drawn. Say I took this dog in from another document and the strokes didn't really match the character of the document that I was dragging him into. So that's kind of a little trick that I use a lot, and I'm going to go backwards and show you it in reverse, that I want the lines to appear thinner because my style of cartooning, I don't really care for real thick lines. It's just my style. A lot of cartoon characters do it. If you'll see like animation on TV, I can't think of any examples right now. I want to say SpongeBob, but that's not what I'm thinking of. Okay, so I tend to like my characters' lines to look thin. So what I'll do right now is go ahead and take my dog up, make him real big again, about twice the size as he was, and proportionally that's kind of how I like the lines to look. I'm going to go to File, Illustrator Preferences, General, and now I'm going to scale the strokes and effects again. And if you've already gotten the point, you can go ahead and quit this video. If you think I'm being redundant, that's fine. But if not, you can follow along. And now I'm going to scale my dog back down to where I think he was before. And now, yeah, as you'll see, all the lines scale down proportionally, and that's kind of the look I was looking for. I'd put my cat back up on top of the dog. And I think that does it for this video. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else that would apply here. If I do, I'll make another amendment. I'll have an amendment video that'll be in there. So you get the gist of scale, strokes, and effects in Adobe Illustrator CS5. Thank you for watching. My name is Brian Zakowski. I hope this was helpful.